Hi, everybody. This is Warren Herman, and today what we're going to speak about are two principles that you can really use to change your mind and therefore gain freedom from different emotional and mental states that you don't want. And this is a very interesting way of dealing with this problem because, I've dealt with different, just different types of thinking, for example, concerns or doubts about my faith or different things that have just been bothersome in various ways in my life. And this is an approach that I believe that you will find will be unique and helpful to these difficulties. I recently made another video that's somewhat longer than this that explains this similar material in a slightly different way. But in this video, we're going to explore this approach through two different quotes from Star Wars. So the first quote that we're going to use happens in one of the prequel movies, The Phantom Menace. And in this quote, Qui-Gon Jinn, the Jedi Master, tells little Anakin Skywalker, he tells him, "Your focus determines your reality." And this quote is very helpful to our mental health because we can use this quote in a few different ways. One of the things that I like about this quote is that it doesn't say that your focus determines reality, because that would be a little bit weird. That would be overstating the case. But our focus determines certainly our experience of reality. And so, in that case, it's our reality is what's determined by our focus. And it's kind of like there are many options for what we can look at in a situation. And based on what type of option we choose to look at, we end up with different experiences, different emotions. So there is this necessity to choose what we focus on and to be able to shift our focus. And the question becomes, how do we do this? And if we are caught in a loop in our mind, whether it's a loop of doubt about our faith, a loop of concern about, our faith, a loop of mistrust, a loop of unforgiveness, a loop of resentment, a loop of, fear or second guessing ourselves about whether we sinned, whatever this loop is, how is it that we get out of this loop? Well, we get out of the loop, by essentially, the image we could use is, the kind of the wheel is going around. How do we stick a spoke in that wheel and stop it? The way that we stop it is through something that is concrete, through something that is a concrete, looking upon something, focusing upon something, as the quote teaches us, that will change our perspective. Because, let's say let's say we're nervous about something. We're wondering about it. Okay, let's look at something. Put that spoke, and boom, stops that naturally. It doesn't have. You don't have to say, okay, how am I gonna stop worrying? You just put into your focus a thing that is a source of safety, for example. So rather than trying to calm down, you just look. You move your focus to the ways that you are safe, rather than thinking about how lonely you are. You think about the ways that you are connected to others and the ways that you can, provide comfort to other people, and so on and so forth. You change your focus, and that shifts your experience of reality. Your focus determines your reality. And so, for example, let's say, there's many ways in which your brain just gets stuck on things. And this is the way out of your brain being stuck on things. So for example, let's say you have some type of weird doubt about, I wonder if this guy's a saint or something. I wonder if maybe you're in your faith, you're having some weird doubt. I wonder, maybe, I don't know about this devotion. I don't know about this saint. I don't know about that. Well, here's the thing. Well, look at the ways in which you can be. Look at the evidence that person is a saint. Look at the evidence that the devotion is legitimate. Of course, you can doubt anything, but your focus determines your reality. So if you put your focus somewhere else, all of a sudden your mind can calm down, and you can make use of, okay, now you can pray to that saint. now you can engage in that devotion, because you're not certain that that devotion is bad. You're not certain that person's not a saint. Look at that uncertainty that you have. Look at the evidence that they are. Move forward. And this brings us to our second quote, the second quote, the second Star Wars quote that's going to really flesh out this approach. And this is from Yoda. And Yoda says, "Do or do not, try not. There is no try." And so the thing is, we don't want to engage in trying to overcome our mental snags. We don't want to try to force our way into believing something, or that's just not an efficient way of dealing with our mental stuckness, whether it's in a worry, whether it's in a scruple, whether it's in a resentment, whether it's in a doubt about our faith, whatever it is. It's not effective to try to just kind of white knuckle it and push through it. That's what the trying is. The trying, he says, there is no try. The trying is an illusion. The trying is, something we're making up because we're not running our brain properly. And so what we want to do is we want to just do it. And, obviously this has weird implications in the world of Star Wars. And, the next thing we see is Yoda levitating a Luke's spaceship out of a swamp. And we then see him, and we see Luke stating, I don't believe it. And, he says, I don't believe it. And Yoda says, that is why you fail. And so that really is, that really is the essential, issue here, is the question of how we believe something. And so the thing really becomes, this essential issue is really about, it really is about how do we come to believe that thing and act on belief rather than trying to kind of overcome this mental clog that doesn't work when we're trying to change our minds about things. And the way we do that is obviously with the first quote. That is we just kind of move our mind to focus on something else. We kind of use that essential thing of shifting our focus so that our reality will be different. We kind of shift that focus, and then sorry, I'm looking at some ants doing something on the ground here, and I was trying to see what are they doing. We see our focus, because our focus allows us to, when we look upon evidences that we are safe, or evidences that we can believe, or evidences, whatever it is, then naturally we believe. Because there's a way we can say seeing is believing, in that sense, and that enables us to then just do without trying. And so this is a really important way to cut through the kind of mental problems that we have. And so I hope this video is helpful in explaining these two different quotes. Your focus determines your reality, from Qui-Gon Jinn, and do or do not. There is no try. And Luke says, I don't believe it. And Yoda says, that is why you fail. Because these things show how our intellect and our will are able to be used in order to overcome these issues. We can use our intellect and our will in these ways, and this enables us to have a new experience of life. And I'll close by explaining something that can be also very helpful to remember a way of thinking about this approach. And this is a metaphor I've used before, and I'm going to use it in a slightly different fashion. And the metaphor that I'm going to use is that of something that comes from some imagery that goes with a certain style of karate, which is that of the dragon and that of the tiger. And so this approach can really be symbolized by the dragon and the tiger and their interplay. We see the dragon as a being that effortlessly floats in the sky in this, Eastern iconography, that has this kind of perspective on, things because it's up in the sky. And that is this first thing of changing our focus. Your focus determines your reality. And being able to look at things, and just kind of shift our focus so that we're not trapped in any kind of, we're not kind of trapped on the ground, so to speak, of this battle and struggle with our beliefs and thoughts and so on and so forth. And the tiger is an interesting creature because it's very it's very strong and powerful, but yet it remains hidden and it blends in. And so this reflects this idea of do or do not, this power to do, yet don't try. It's like this thing of this kind of hiddenness of the effort, the way that the tiger is concealed by its stripes. And so I think we can really use this as a beautiful way of remembering how to use this approach to our mental well-being. And I think that this can really help us to remember how to use this approach to overcome our various challenges in our minds. And I think, there is this way that we can really, if I wanted to just kind of summarize, so let's say, just so you can really see how it works. So for example, let's say, and this is a true example, I had a certain fear that a certain saint wasn't a saint, or that they may have a delusion in their spirituality. And so, for example, if I have this kind of fear based on some certain things that I read some criticisms about this saint, and I said, oh no, maybe that's true. And so then I wasn't praying to this saint because this was kind of clogging my mind and I was kind of uncertain. Even though, the church made its judgment. I wasn't obviously saying I know better than the church. I just was kind of afraid. There was kind of this clog in my thinking. And so I can't force myself I could force myself to pray to that saint. That might work. But the way that can work is, you look at, say, okay, well, in what ways am I uncertain about my concerns? Okay, well, I'm uncertain about them in various ways, so I don't have to obey them if I really don't even know if they're true. And also, how can I be certain, or can I kind of ground some belief in that? Saying, well, there's obviously evidence, the church approves of them, there's certain virtues I can see here and there if I, analyze it. So, the thing is, there's evidence that I can just look at. And the thing is, if I just look at that evidence and then act upon that evidence, so don't try to say, okay, now I'm going to force myself to have no feelings about this. Now I'm going to force myself to not have an emotional reaction to this or a mental fear of this. No, you don't do that. You say, okay, I'm going to look at those things that are good, and then I'm going to act on it. Then I'm going to pray to that saint. Then I'm going to do this. So this is just an example of how you would use this approach to get rid of a mental clog that's kind of there. It's just something that's bothersome. It's like something that's just stuck in your head, and you can use it to kind of clean up your mental mess. And so I hope that this is a helpful analogy, a helpful example that can enable you to use these two principles to really revolutionize your mental well-being.